When we come back, the latest on another conflict. In Afghanistan, Soviet forces are kept on the move by Muslim rebels who've taken their guerrilla warfare to the outskirts of the capital. Increasing tensions in the Gulf this year have overshadowed the conflict in the region inside Afghanistan. Today, the country's communist leader told his party that it should work towards a coalition with the Muslim rebels trying to bring down the Soviet-backed government. The communists came to power in Afghanistan in 1978, and Soviet forces moved in the following year to quell opposition. Now there are 115,000 Soviet troops in the country, and at least 3 million refugees have crossed the border into Pakistan. The Soviets face resistance from about 200,000 rebels, and British experts say the cost could be £2.5 billion a year. The rebels dominate the countryside, with the Soviets fully controlling only 5 cities, including the capital, Kabul. Even there, though, the rebels are active, as Hanrahan reports.
Night brings the war lapping at the very edge of Kabul, and the outgoing fire demonstrates vividly how closely the guerrillas are pressing on the city's defenses, despite government reluctance to acknowledge it. There's a constant succession of flares and barrages at the perimeter, and occasional explosions inside the city itself. Aircraft taking off hurl out brilliant flares, an attempt to protect themselves from the sophisticated heat-seeking missiles now in the hands of the guerrillas. The missiles, the American Stingers and the British blowpipes are changing the war. With dawn, the first helicopters start their patrols, but they too are vulnerable to missile attack, and they can no longer give their ground forces unchallenged air cover. More of the burden of fighting is falling on the infantry. We watched one mission right on the edge of Kabul. It began with an artillery bombardment of a hillside. Then the helicopters attacked. But instead of hovering and pouring fire on their targets, they darted swiftly in and out, covering their retreat with flares. Afghan officials routinely dismiss all such activity as training, but they stopped us from checking. The danger in the air has forced a change of tactics on the ground. Soviet soldiers are now strengthening the defenses of Kabul. They've taken over the Afghan observation posts in the hills and have started fortifying them. From their strong points, they direct the armored columns which sweep the valleys, trying to keep the Mujahideen out of range of the airport and the city. But fortifying the city means abandoning the countryside. Pakman, just beyond the defenses, has become a no-man's land. It used to be a fashionable resort for the wealthy, but years of fighting have wrecked it. It's supposed to be held by the government with the help of a few armed tribesmen, but at night it's government guns that rake it to keep the guerrillas away. Local officials insist there's been no trouble here for a year, but all the other evidence suggests that the guerrillas are still active in the area, and at night these ruins become their territory. Soviet forces are more than ever pinned down by the war, 8 years after they entered Afghanistan to change the government. Their barracks have become solid, permanent structures, and as the ground fighting intensifies, they're doing more of it. Some selected paratroopers said they'd learned to respect the Mujahideen's fighting ability.
But you see, to underestimate the enemy is just to lose the combat.
Afghan troops are being relegated to bit parts in their own war. They watch the passes into the city and search vehicles for smuggled arms. Soviet officers say the Afghan conscripts lack military skills, and diplomats doubt if they have the stomach for the long, drawn-out war against their fellow countrymen. The Afghan Deputy Defense Minister says he would prefer a negotiated end to the fighting.
Party government leaders have repeatedly declared an appropriate, peaceful and flexible position. The first better way for the solution for ending this war is a peaceful way to fight.
But there's no sign of realistic negotiations yet. Kabul is being turned into a heavily fortified camp, and armored patrols keep open the roads between the cities. Huge supply convoys are escorted through territory conceded to the Mujahideen. If the change of tactics noted this year is successful, it will allow the Soviet forces to hold fast inside their defenses. and only negotiate at a time and a pace of their choosing. For the moment, nobody seems to want to stop fighting.
Brian Hanrahan of the BBC reporting from inside